Here you will have a presentation on offset and how to use a transfer of technology for implementing offset. My name is Alain Fernandez. I'm treasurer of ECCO. ECCO is an association dedicated to, not dedicated to offset, but to, how to say that, to make aware of offset and to educate people about offset in order to see offset on the other way, not a constraint, an opportunity. So Joost from Rheinmetall, Joost has been, we have been working on offset for quite some time, and we did some transactions together. Before that, I was working for Thales. And Joost is a member of ECCO also, and one of the best offset manager I must say that I have seen. And you will see that transfer of technology is now in high demand in offset rules with countries. But you will see that you can use this tool really to make a win-win transaction, both for the company and for the country. Joost, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Alain. My name is Joost van Gimmert, and can you all hear me clear?
Yes.
I'm a Dutchman, and I work for a German company since 2007. Prior to that, I've been working in the telecommunication industry for quite some time with AT&T, a US company. I'm based in Düsseldorf. We have an offset team. We call it an industry participation team these days, of about 12 people across Rheinmetall at several locations in Canada, Norway, Germany, of course, Switzerland, Italy, and South Africa. I lead that team, and we try to keep the team as small and effective as possible. We have about 2 billion euros in obligations, in commitments worldwide in 15 different places, primarily in NATO countries, but also in the Middle East and South Africa, Korea, and lots of other places, Canada, not to forget. My presentation today will be on the valuation of technology and the transfer of technology. And the reason is because many countries require the transfer of technologies and offset deals these days. There is no exception to it. Whenever you get involved in offset transactions, the transfer of technology that is developed internally will be requested for offset purposes. And with this introduction, I will start my presentation. I will limit it to the transfer of technology. There is one business case, but that will go beyond the time that I have here. So I will limit it to the theory here. Bertrand, can you demonstrate how I move to the next slide? All right. Enter. So I'll start with an introduction, then the country approach. I mean, each country has a different look at the valuation of technology. Then the technology valuation itself, and then I have a business case on the VLAN fuse, which we did in South Africa a number of years ago, and then we will get to the conclusions. I'm not sure whether the business case will... whether we will get to the business case, but we'll see how fast it goes. And if you have any questions, just stand up, announce your name, and ask your question. So what is technology? It's from covering basic needs to making an engine to make your life more easier. I like the graph. I don't know if you like it, but that is my way of looking at technology. So we have been living in an era where technology advancement is growing so fast that it is hard to keep even up with simple things. as electronics and information technology. So it goes fast. So offsets have been advancing in complexity and requirements, especially in regards to the technology focus. So technology transfer, that's what I started with, is dominant in the majority of the offset requirements. Whether you go to India, whether you go to Norway, whether you go to Denmark, whether you go to Canada, the offset agencies, the states, the departments of defense, they want to have the technology in their home country. And we're seeing that not only in the countries that I just mentioned, but also in the Middle East, with countries such as the UAE and Saudi Arabia. They focus on direct offsets. And with direct offsets, you need to transfer technology. And in many cases, it's a requirement under the procurement contract, so they will not procure without the transfer of technology. Research and development is strongly favorable, and the technology level is a key factor for the valuation of offset programs and the awarding of multipliers. I guess many of you are aware that in offset cases, multipliers are used to award certain technology levels. So the country approach. So there is I made a selection in hard type of approach, the sophisticated, the selective, committed, conditional, and newcomers approach. And you, based on this selection, you can make a differentiation in the countries. So if you go for the hard approach, you're faced with countries such as India, Brazil, Australia, the UK. And the hard approach means that without the transfer of technology, there is simply no transaction. There is nothing. If you're not allowed, if you do not allow for the transfer of technology, you will not be selected in these places. The sophisticated approach for countries like South Korea, the Netherlands, and Norway, the transfer of technology dominates requirements or is targeted to cover specific gaps. So, for instance, we have filled a gap in my home country in the Netherlands with an offset program whereby we started the production of ballistic protection plates. There was no industry engaged in this in protection plates, and we started that. So we filled a gap because there was a direct requirement from the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Economic Affairs. So I call that a sophisticated approach. Then we have a selective approach for countries like Denmark, Spain, and Canada, where they allow the transfer of technology under certain circumstances. And the multipliers vary. We have an offset project in Denmark with a local company that produces ammunition cases, plastic ammunition cases, and we help that company to test and qualify those plastic ammunition cases to go to the market. And they gave us quite some high multipliers for testing these cases and qualifying these cases. Then we have the committed approach of countries such as Bulgaria, Colombia, Israel, Poland, Portugal, Taiwan, where the transfer of technology is defined as a separate transaction, and multipliers go from 1 to 10. The conditional approach for countries like Greece, Turkey, and Romania, where the transfer of technology is valued or credited based on the outcome. And as you will see later on in this presentation, the outcome is important for the buyer, for the country that buys the defense equipment, whereas the cost is important for the defense company. We will always look at what the technology itself, what the development of the technology has costed us, whereas a buying nation is more interested in the results, the outcome. And then as last, there is the newcomers approach of countries in the Middle East, where the transfer of technology is a separate transaction, is introduced. We are basically, at this time, and I can only speak for the company that I am employed with, for Rheinmetall, we are transferring technology in the Middle East, in the UAE, to one of the Towers companies in order to facilitate them in making electronic parts locally. As you will all realize, transfer of technology is a basic requirement of all of these nations, because simply they want to have the defense technologies in their home country. They want to be in a position to make these products themselves, not to be reliant on other nations with export restrictions. That is basically the reason why the transfer of technology is there. So, a buyer's perspective and a seller's perspective. For the buyer, and with buyer is meant the nation that is buying here, the value is higher. Offset program brings intangible assets, including technology and parts production. So for the buying nation, the value is higher. Whereas for the seller, the defense company, the cost is the money incurred to implement the offset obligation. So the seller, the defense company, will always look at what did it cost us to develop this technology internally. Those are two separate things. Now there are three approaches to evaluate a technology. So there is the cost-based approach, which the defense company in much cases takes. There is the market-based approach that many of the buying nations take, and the income-based approach, which is also a buying nation approach. So if we look at the cost-based approach, then the economic assumption here is that neither a buyer nor a seller is willing to pay more for an asset than the cost of creating it or replacing it. You have two types, the reproduction cost and the replacement cost. What is speaking for this is it is simple. You can simply demonstrate what it has cost you to develop the technology based on hours, based on expenses, based on travels, based on man hours, based on machinery. You can all easily demonstrate it. Well, not easily, but there is a way to demonstrate what the cost of developing the technology is. The negative side, or what speaks against it, is, and that's what you hear in many of the negotiations that we have with the offset agencies, that you're unable to capture the potential of the technology. So you're only telling them what it has cost you to develop it, but you're not telling them what they can do with it and what it will ultimately bring. If we are, this goes back to the cost-based approach. If we are counting all the beans, if we are counting what it has cost us, then basically there are two factors that you need to take into consideration. Multipliers, which goes back to the page I showed you earlier. So that depends on the country that you're dealing with. In South Africa, the multiplier will go up from 1 to 10. In the Netherlands, it will stick with 7. In Denmark, they will not give you higher multipliers than 7. And in Canada, for instance, they will give you no multiplier whatsoever. So the multiplier varies. Then the nominal value, which is composed of 4 elements. The value of the actual technology, so how much did it cost you to develop the technology? the operational cost, the NRCs, the non-recurring costs for tooling, training, cost of staff, travel, lodges and expenses. Time to market benefit. You can, if you take the point of view of the buying nation, then they have a time to market benefit. They will get the technology right away, where it has cost us 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years to develop it. The buying nation will get it instantly. So there is a time to market benefit, which results in savings, which you can also take into account when you take the nominal value. Then you can take the license fee and royalties paid by the recipient or added as a multiplier to the nominal cost. So the offset valuation of a transfer technology is basically the multiplier times the nominal value of it. How much time is left, Bertrand?
5 minutes.
2 minutes. All right. Market-based approach. Evaluation is based on comparable market prices, and this is what you often see in countries like the Middle East. They will just tell us, well, what does it cost me to buy this technology in the market? And if your valuation based on this cost-based approach is too high, then just leave it. I will just buy it in the market. So it's simple, and probably reasonable too. But what speaks against it, it's impossible to apply if data or similar technology are not available. So if we have a high technology available, they cannot find it elsewhere at comparable prices. Then there is the income-based approach, which is the approach mostly used by the buying nations. They measure the net present value of the stream of associated economic benefits over the lifetime of the technology. So they just take an assumption on what this technology will create in the next 5 or 10 years, and they will calculate the net present value of it, and that is the approach that much of the nations will take. Having said that, I will leave it here. This will go too far, this business case with the transfer of technology that we did in South Africa. And I will put the floor open for any questions that you may have, and otherwise, this is it. Thank you very much. Any questions? Guy, you must have a very intelligent question here.
I will start with an intelligent question. Thank you. I hope so. Very interesting. Thank you, Joost. What I see in your presentation, sometimes when you speak about TOT, especially in companies, you feel that you will not have the possibility to negotiate with the country. Of course, they want the TOT. But when you have this different approach, especially when you have the value plus multiplier, you can, if you can back, you can see that you have various way of evaluating the TOT. And so if there is not the first way, it will be the second way or third or fourth, and you have a mixed here, yes. You have a mix of this time to market, operational cost, and so on. And it seems to me that you have some flexibility in negotiating with offset authority. So I would like to have your point of view of this flexibility when they require TOT.
Well, we use this nominal value in many places. Just and you need to be very detailed and be ready with numbers. And if you make a good calculation and if you prepare yourself thoroughly, then in many cases, well, not in many, but in a lot of cases, it will be accepted because you've done your homework and you demonstrate actually what the real figures and numbers are. And of course, in some places, this is up for negotiation. But if you're well prepared, if you are sitting at the table well prepared, then we've recently had this model accepted in negotiations in Saudi Arabia with the local SAMI, Saudi Arabia Military Industry Organization, simply because they asked for it and we came up with the right numbers.
Thank you.
So prepare, be prepared.
Thank you. Maybe one question regarding IP. So when you go to those negotiations and they ask transfer of technology, usually the IP, how we deal with the IP or the IP of the product itself?
The intellectual property. Well, I mean, that's part of negotiation too. You usually would ask for royalties if the technology is being used by somebody else. But as I listed here, the royalties, which normally have to be paid by the customer, will be added here in my nominal value as a multiplier. So we'll just take a period of 10 years, tell them usually the royalties on this technology would have been, I don't know, 10,000 a year, times 10. This will be added to the nominal value of the transfer of technology. This is how we do it.
Guy Fremont speaking. There are plenty of factors on which customers can rely on to evaluate technology transfer. And I all agree with all the factors that you said and what we should take into account. But sometimes they rely on the expected income that they will get and the profits related to the income. And also they try to evaluate the maturity of the technology you are transferring to them, and also the time frame in which this technology will be at upfront compared to the rising new technologies. So just to say that sometimes it is more complicated to evaluate technology transfer.
You're completely right, Guy. And it varies from country to country. Some places it is easier. Even in places like, and you must know this, in South Africa, they have a plain formula for that, for evaluating the technology. So they don't let you come up with a creative type of proposal. It's a formula that you have to fill out, basically. And in other places, the nations will just tell you, I'm not interested in what it has costed you. I'm just interested in what it will bring for us. And you have to be realistic about the approaches. I mean, many different nations, many different requests, and many different ways of approaching the evaluation of technology.
Last question. Well, I will ask the last question. Transfer of technology is about knowledge. It's about a human person acquiring this knowledge on the technology. And in certain countries, no name, you may face a shortage of qualified people. How do you deal with that in order to have your transfer technology, to make a success of your transfer technology? Do you incorporate the training or do you go to a university or training center so you can have these people train on a broad basis, and after on your TOT, and how you try to value that in some countries?
Yeah, good question. I mean, the nations that you are referring to, I know what you are referring to here. What we do, we just hire professionals to do training, and we just take the local people that need to be working on the machinery or the production lines or the capital goods. We just bring them to our German or Canadian or South African facilities and train them. Full effective training. As a matter of fact, as I speak here, there are 4 people from universities from Abu Dhabi. They're being trained in South Africa at one of our plant engineering factories to do their master on engineering. Yeah, I mean, we've quite a track record in training people and getting people on board. That is part of the German schooling system. So, having said that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.
And hope to see you sometime, somewhere.
So thank you, Jost. My name is Chantal Dagnon, the president of ECCO. I just would like to thank you for all of you to just come and share the experience of Jost. And again, thank you very much, Jost.